All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our sixth webinar in the series, which is all about smart meters, myths and facts. We are joined today by Energy Queensland, which is phenomenal. We've got three experts who will be able to uh, engage us and teach us and help us learn about smart meters. I'm just going to share my screen. Apologies. All right. I would like to start this morning by acknowledging Australia's First Nations people as the original custodians of this land. I am on the land of the Yugambeh people this morning. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend those same respects to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples who might be joining us today. Quick little agenda. So as I mentioned, we've got three wonderful experts from Energy Queensland who will be spending roughly 15 minutes on each topic. The first topic will be the legacy meter replacement plan in Queensland, and that will be with Luke. Then we're going to jump to Richard, who will explain how smart meters work. And then we've got some common myths and facts and some common questions, frequently asked questions in regards to smart meters specifically. And then Brian will be rounding out the morning with smart meters and how they work and how to understand them for your electricity bill and how to understand tariffs as well. Just a little bit of information for everyone. We will be having the question and answer box open. So if you do have any questions throughout the webinar, please pop them into that Q&A box and we'll attempt to answer them throughout the session. If we don't get a chance, we'll answer them at the end. If you get to the end of the webinar and you think, oh, goodness, I should have asked that, please feel free to send me an email. My email will be in the post information that goes out, and I will make sure to get that answered by our experts. Quickly, Council on the Aging has been around since 1957. We're a champion for seniors, advocating for policy and services that improve their quality of life. And as Queensland's population ages, Council on the Aging Queensland plays a vital role in ensuring the voices of older people are heard in policy development and community conversations. Through the Energy4Seniors project, we are partnered with ARQRV. They are the Association of Residents of Queensland Retirement Villages. They were formed in 1992 and is the united voice of residents within Queensland Retirement Villages. They are a member-based organisation and they're government recognised peak organisation, working for the rights and interests of all residents in to government and industry peak bodies. I apologise, I am a little unwell. We do have two polls today. If I could just open that up for everyone. They are very, very quick. Two questions. The first one is, do you have a smart meter? Yes, no, or I don't know. And I'll give everyone a couple of seconds to do this. And then the other one is, I currently use my energy in the middle of the day, and strongly disagree to strongly agree. And then we will have the same poll at the end. Same two questions. You can see everyone's jumping on. Thank you so much for that. Brilliant. I'll give that another. Excellent. All right. And I will end that poll. Thank you so much. All right. I will pass over now to Luke. Take it away, Luke.
Thank you, Kayleen, and good morning, everybody. So my name's Luke Webber, and I'm from our customer metering department within Energex and Ergon Energy Network. The reason why I'm here is I've played probably the lead role in the development of our legacy meter replacement plan for Queensland across both of our networks. So I'll just sort of talk through what that means and a little bit of a background as well as to why we're looking at the replacement plan, what's happened in the industry, and hopefully some useful information for yourselves. So probably just start with the electricity supply chain. So just a bit of understanding around where the different, I suppose, components sit. So what we've got is our generators. So all of our electricity comes from our generators. Primarily that has been coal-fired power stations. However, what we're starting to see is a lot more renewables, whether that's wind, solar, or other renewable technologies. On the large scale, but there's also smaller scale generation that's starting to come through as we transition into a cleaner energy network. From the generators, that goes across to our transmission network, which carries the high voltage, and that basically distributes the energy across the state. So the Powerlink Queensland is the company that owns and manages and has a responsibility for that. They then hand that down to our distribution network, which is Ergon Energy Network and Energex. So we're responsible for then distributing the power more locally around communities and ultimately through to your households. And that's where your electricity retailer comes in. So they purchase the electricity from the distribution networks and then on-sell that onto yourselves as the end consumer. Our network is changing. So if we think back quite a while ago, from a general household perspective, there wasn't a lot happening. General appliances. As we sort of move forward, what we're starting to see is a lot more renewables and a lot more technology. Things like electric vehicles, solar and battery installations in the houses, and different options for people in how they're going to use electricity and how they're going to manage their electricity. And moving forward, we're expecting that will become a lot more prevalent in people's lives. The key thing is smart meters are a critical component to enable this transition to happen. As I just said, so yeah, the smart meters critical component in allowing the transition of the energy network as we move towards that sort of more renewable energy. One of the key things that smart meters does is it enables the connection and management of new technologies. So whether from a household use, solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, and what else might come up in the future as well. So to be able to get the benefits from those technologies, customers need a smart meter to enable that. Another key benefit around smart meters is it's going to enable customers to better track their own electricity usage and potentially save money. So what that means is with a smart meter, you actually get provision to have much better data to understand where you're using your electricity, what times of the day, how you're using electricity, and then that'll enable you to work with your retailer around, well, what's the best tariff options for myself? Can I get on a tariff that better suits my needs, or can I adjust my needs and adjust my usage patterns to better suit a cheaper tariff? So without smart meters, with your standard old legacy meters, I'll call them, they didn't give that type of information. So it really takes those options away from customers. Another big benefit as well is the meters are remotely read or can be remotely read. So what we find is that stops a lot of the access issues that our meter readers would have if there's no access, in particular with dogs, because we are very, very mindful about the safety of our workers and all workers and the community. So we want to protect that. So with a smart meter, you don't need somebody to come into your house every quarter to read your meter. It's done remotely, and the amount of site visits would be limited. It won't be none, but it'll be limited. And another key big benefit from a network perspective is the smart meters will give us some really good power quality data with what's happening on our network as well. So that's going to enable Energex and Ergon Energy to really look at where do we need to spend the money to make sure the network is secure, and how do we best, I suppose, juggle that or manage that in the areas that need it the most. So next one, thanks, Kayleen. So The smart meter rollout in Queensland to date. So far, we've got approximately 55% of Queensland customers already have a smart meter installed in their premise. How we've got there so far is in 2017 there was regulatory changes that meant that all new and exchange meters must be a smart meter. So from 2017, we didn't install any legacy meters. Your retailer would have engaged another meter provider to install a smart meter on their behalf. And then looking sort of more holistically across the whole network, we've got about 2.35 million customers connected across Ergon and Energex's combined area. So that's, when you look at that, that's quite a large number of smart meters already out there, but still quite a way to go to get that full penetration across the state. So the next steps in the smart meter rollout is there's been new regulations are brought in which come into effect from the 1st of December this year around a legacy meter replacement plan. So effectively what that is a plan developed by the network, so by Energex and Ergon Energy Network, to basically outline a schedule for all retailers on when they should be replacing the legacy meters with a new smart meter. To develop the plan, and that's probably the component, that's what I've been heavily involved in. We have done a lot of engagement. So we have been working with all electricity retailers across the state. We've been working with their counterparts, the metering providers, who are ultimately going to be the people on the ground installing the new meters. We've talked to lots of various groups, including government, different industry partners and community groups to really get a gauge on what we're proposing as part of the plan. Does it suit the needs of the customers and our key stakeholders within the industry? Effectively then, the plan, as I said, will then outline from what time or in what period should the smart meters be replaced. The rules state that we've got until 2030 to do that, and it's broken up into 5 yearly blocks, starting from December this year through till November 2030. That's where network, with that plan, that'll then get handed over to your electricity retailer. So it's then the electricity retailer's responsibility to enact that plan. So they'll engage with their metering providers to attempt to have all those meters installed within the time periods. One of the key things that we have looked at as well is where does it make sense to have a smart meter sooner rather than later, and thinking before on the previous slide, anywhere where there's potential safety concerns. So where we have dogs, we're looking to target areas with high volumes of dogs earlier in the piece to really provide that safety aspect for our workers and for the general public and customers. But we've also looked at it more holistically as how do we make it efficient? And that's one of the key things. We want to make sure that we're not imposing any increased costs. So we've tried to bundle it together as best as possible as well, so that the smart meter rollout across all the years is efficient, it's safe, and it's cost effective. Sorry.
Did I go too soon? Sorry.
Yeah, just back one slide for a sec. Sorry.
Driver.
Yeah, so current meters may be replaced regardless of age. So I'll just talk to that for a little bit. So when we talk about a legacy meter, a lot of people think the old meters with the disc that spins around. And I know Richard will have an example coming up shortly. But a legacy meter could also be an electronic meter or a digital meter, as they're sometimes referred to, that isn't set up with the communications and hasn't been set up as a smart meter as per se. So we will be replacing all of those meters regardless. So, just because it's a current looking meter doesn't necessarily mean that it's a smart meter. And one of the key things with the legacy meter replacement plan and some of the other rules that were put in place is the retailers must give notice to the customers of the intention to replace a smart meter. So you will receive a notification from your retailer before any work is done, and it should outline, the date and approximate time as to which a smart meter will be installed, and it'll also give you some different options as well around what your rights are in terms of if you want comms or if you want to look at not having comms. So there'll be that communication piece from your retailer, and it'd be suggested to then coordinate with them around any challenges, access, if you need to lock dogs up and things like that.
Excellent.
Yep.
We do have a few questions already coming through, Luke. I'm not sure if you want to answer them. I might just ask them, and if you're prepared to answer them, great. Or if you think that maybe Richard or Brian might be best answering them when we get there, just let me know.
Absolutely.
So the first one is, do the apps that come with solar panels and batteries make smart meter readings redundant from a customer perspective? Maybe Richard.
Look, I can probably start with that. Look, some of the apps that come with your solar installations and batteries will provide the customer with good information. However, with the smart meter, your retailer will also be able to provide you with that holistic overview of your entire installation as well. So it's some solar companies with their applications may also provide that, others don't. So you may actually get benefits out of having the smart meter. But the thing that those, I suppose your solar and battery doesn't do is it doesn't provide that information to the network as well, which is another key component of the smart meters to enable that visibility of where our usage is and where we need to focus our attention.
Yeah, excellent. The other two that are here are, one is, how do I know if I have a smart meter? And I know Richard's going to do a demonstration on that, so that will be answered. And then I think the other question Brian might answer at the end. So I will move on from that then, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Luke. That was really great. And now, Richard, good morning.
G'day, everybody. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so I'm part of Energy Queensland as well. However, you might have seen the brand around Yerika. We are unregulated part of Energy Queensland, which means we operate in a commercial market. We specialise in energy infrastructure solutions, including network, solar, wind, battery projects. And you might have seen the superhighway in Queensland when you can charge your car. We're behind that. We also have a metering division, and that metering division comprises of three parts: the metering coordinator, the meter provider, and the meter data provider. So when Luke was talking about the MP earlier, we are elected by the retailer to install metering on behalf of them. And we operate across Australia, and there's obviously a number of retailers, and there's also a number of metering providers. So it's a competitive market, and we have to, commercially agree with the retailer on rates and so forth. So in Queensland, we do a lot of the domestic metering for Ergon Energy, Ergon Energy Retail. In Southeast Queensland, we do pockets here and there, but you might actually end up with a different meter provider installing the meters. So during this questions and answer session, I'll be talking on behalf of the way Yerika does metering, but that can vary slightly with other metering providers. So next slide, please.
All right, I was just replying to some questions. All right, I'm going to highlight you now so we get to see.
Yeah. And maybe just stop sharing the screen. There we go.
Yep.
So Luke alluded that I was going to show off some meters. This is the live demo, which is me holding some meters up. So I hope you're not disappointed by that. Ultimately, you might remember, and you might already have, one of these rotating disk meters, or an accumulation meter, or a Type 6 meter. It's known by various names. This one's actually labelled SeqWeb, which is, the name of the Energex distribution area before it was called Energex. And ultimately, it's got a rotating disc and gives you an accumulation read. So the meter reader would come around every quarter and read the numbers off here, and that would then be supplied back to the energy retailer to give you a reading, and the difference between the reading of the 3-month period would be put on your bill. Another type of an accumulation meter, or also known as a digital meter, which you may have, is one like this. This is not a smart meter per se, where we have comms enabled and it has interval data, but it would give you a reading here if it was turned on. And the same thing, the meter reader would come around every 3 months and they would take the values off that accumulation read, the amount of energy you've used over that 3-month period. And then that would be given to the retailer. And that would also, this meter could also be used for solar. In some cases, you might have had a solar installed quite a few years ago, and you might have a meter like that. Okay, so type 4 meter, smart meter, interval meter, remote enabled meter, named by many names as well, is this one. So that it's a smart meter, looks sort of similar to the digital meter, but underneath, in a sealed area, so this part's sealed, so no one can open this up unless they're a meter provider. It has a modem. So this orange thing here is actually a modem, similar to what you'd have in your mobile phone, but it uses some slightly different technologies in some cases. So ultimately, this meter would record data every 5 minutes, and it's called interval data. That data is then kept inside the memory of the meter. The connection to get the data out of the meter is via the modem. The modem's got a little, in this case, it's got a little aerial that you might see on the side of your meter box, or even on the side of the meter. Sometimes it's even inside, so you don't see it. Every night, our metering data provider for our meters we have installed would contact this meter and download the data into our back-end systems. Now, that data transfer happens via a modem. It's got nothing to do with your home Wi-Fi or anything like that. It's all completely separate. The data is then stored in our back-end systems, and then daily we have to send that off to the different parties that are able to receive that data. So your retailer, the energy network, LNSP, so Energex or Ergon, if the meter is installed in their area, and AEMO, that's the Australian Energy Market Operator. So those bodies then use that data to do analysis, or put the bill together, or run the market better. So that's really the differences between my show and tell of the meters. We're going to move into some questions now, and I'll try and answer those. Thank you.
I'll read the ones, the frequently asked ones that we've got, but we've also got some others down here as well. So the first one is, well, how do I know if I have a smart meter? I think you've just visually shown that, so that's wonderful.
Well, I will just touch on that because sometimes it's not that clear, because
okay.
An older digital type meter, or a type 6 accumulation meter, is not a smart meter, right?
Okay.
So it doesn't have comms enabled. So just if you go into you happen to look at your meter box or on the wall and that has a digital display, it doesn't mean it's a smart meter. So actually the best idea is to really contact your retailer, because then you'll know. You sometimes can tell from the bill, depending on the retailer. It actually might say you have an interval meter, so there's no start and end readings, or it might say in the top right-hand corner of the bill, you have a smart meter, something like that. But really the best way of going, sometimes retailers have apps or websites, so you can actually look at the data. And if you find that you've got, half an hour or 15-minute data available, then 100% you've got a smart meter.
Excellent.
So yeah, that's the answer to that one. Thank you.
Oh, that's good. And then why do I need a smart meter if I already have a digital meter?
Right. So as Luke was explaining, it's a market requirement that all premises are updated with a smart meter by 2030. The reason is our the way we use energy is changing, and we need to have that interval data available so we can better adjust the network, or change the network to cater for the changing energy. Also, the market settles at 5 minutes, so the actual AEMO market requires that data to wash up every day how the energy is used, because the generators actually have to bid into a 5-minute market. So it just gives that equity across the market. That's the reason why.
Yeah. And if you have, this is a very common question, if you have solar panels, do you automatically have a smart meter already?
Well, potentially in the last few years, since 2017, if you had an older type rotating disc meter, good chance that a smart meter would be installed. If you had a digital meter, there might still be a chance that you have just the accumulation read for the solar energy for the month or the quarter period. But you probably will soon have a smart meter installed as part of the rollout if you don't have a smart meter. But if you're putting solar in fresh, 100% a smart meter would be installed, because that's how the retailer would need to get the amount of energy exported or imported to the network.
Yeah. And what about customers in remote areas who might not have communications or the 3G, 4G situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have worked, speaking for Eureka metering, we have worked closely with providers like Telstra and Vodafone and so forth to improve the technologies and the reach. So we actually have some newer technologies that extend the reach further than you might get off your mobile phone. So if you might be in an area that on 4G or even 5G and you don't get a very good signal, we actually have technologies that might give that a better reach. They're very low bandwidth technologies, so they probably wouldn't be very good for mobile phone use, but it's enough to get the data out of the meter. In cases where we can't, where that's not available, we'll actually still use a smart meter to measure your interval data, and every 3 months a meter reader would come around and connect to the meter and download that interval data that will then be sent up to the retailers and networks and AEMO. In the meantime, the retailer might give you some estimated bills monthly, depending on the arrangement.
Excellent.
Okay.
Can a landline be used?
No, we actually used to use landlines. Eureka metering has been operating this market for more than 20 years. And in the early days, we would use landlines, but that's been phased out. Landlines are becoming less and less, what's the right word, solid, I suppose. More and more people don't even have a landline available, and there's lots of logistics to trying to connect a landline to a meter, so we don't offer that as a service. No, it's only via the modem, the 4G or NB-IoT technology.
And it's the modem within the smart meter itself,
Yeah.
not your home Wi-Fi.
Sorry, yes, the modem within the smart meter. It's got no connection for our Eureka metering as an MP, nothing to do with the home Wi-Fi whatsoever.
Yeah, awesome. And then can people request communications to be disabled from their smart meters?
Look, that is currently an option available. It depends on how the retailer might have an extra charge to deal with not having the ability to download the data or get access to the data nightly. So that's something you have to discuss with them. Also, don't forget that by not enabling communications on the meter, anything to do with access becomes an issue. So if there's lock gates or dogs on site, those sort of things have to then be catered for, and you're more likely to get estimated bills during the time you don't have the data. You don't get the feedback to help change your behavior to maybe optimize a better energy bill, a cheaper energy bill, which I know Brian's going to take us through later. So there's a lot of benefits to having the smart meter data available. Even if you're not using it, it actually helps the network better manage the network and the retailer optimize, your arrangements. And also, if you're using the government Energy Made It Easy website, once you've had a smart meter installed for 1 year, through the proper privacy considerations, AEMO can present that data to that website behind the scenes to help calculate the best bill for you. So it takes a lot of hassle out of trying to find a good bill from a retailer.
And will I lose power when a smart meter is installed?
Yeah, definitely, because the meter's in series with the supply coming from the network. So usually you'll get notifications depending on the arrangement. Maybe I think it's between 60 days, up to 60 days, and sometimes less than that. It can be under 4 days depending on what's going on. And there'll be an arrangement where the meter provider's coming to install the meter.
Yeah.
And yeah, they'll give you a heads up when they get on site to say that the power's going to go off, usually between 15 and maybe an hour at the worst case scenario to swap over, but usually a lot quicker than that to swap over the meter.
Okay, cool. And yeah, obviously you said you'll get notification.
Yes.
So hopefully people can make arrangements for that time.
Exactly.
I do have a couple of other questions that have come through. I wonder if two of them seem to be about embedded networks and
Okay.
two are related to costs. So did you want me to read them to you now, or should I wait until after Brian? And then
I can have a go with the embedded networks ones. If the costs are related to the energy bill, it's probably more for Brian.
Yeah, okay. So the first one is from a participant who said that they live in a retirement village with 3 units all in one box, and do we need to have one supplier?
Oh, that's a very topical question.
Yes.
Luke might even be better at answering that with regards to the LMR rules.
Yeah, so it would depend on your current configuration, I think. So with the 3 units with the one supplier, you could have your own individual NIMIs and accounts, in which case nothing would need to change. When you got a smart meter, you would still have that same relationship with your retailer. However, if you are in an embedded network or a private metering setup, sometimes the body corporates would have the main account and then they would charge the individual customers, which I believe is still allowed under the rules. However, I can't remember exactly when, but there was provisions put in that all customers in those situations can also then look to become part of an embedded network. So then you could have your own electricity retailer through that network. So it's probably something that you'd really need to talk to your current retailer about. And if you don't have a retailer, then have a chat to the body corporate about, because there has been some change in that space over the years, as opposed to historically you were kind of just caught in that body corporate scenario.
Excellent.
Thanks, Luke. Great answer.
And there's 2 more. One is a comment, but I think it's an interesting comment. He said that this person said they live in a retirement village with 4 units in the block and they each have separate meters, but only 2 already have smart meters. It's an interesting comment. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can feel that one if you like, Richard. So currently, there is, apart from any new or exchanged meters, there's no requirement for your retailer to put a smart meter in. And look, I'm not familiar with where this is, whether it's in Southeast Queensland or in the northern southern areas, but ultimately it would be upon failure, or retailers have been proactive and they have been getting out there and doing their own rollouts as well. So they're aware of the change that's coming. They've been trying to get on the front foot and get more smart meters in. You may have the scenario where your neighbour has one retailer, you have a different retailer. So they may be looking at things slightly different. And look, ultimately with the smart meter plan, the replacement plan, where we've been able to, we've bundled them together. So we're looking to try and do whole streets together, where the retailer's the same, but other retailers, if it's different retailers, they may be slightly offset from each other.
Awesome. And I think this is of a similar vein, but I could be wrong. This person has said, my villa is connected to a paired meter reader with a neighbour's villa. The neighbour does not want a smart meter. And how do they know if their meter reading for this person's villa is for their villa only? And they were told by their retailer that they would have to have it isolated at a cost of $300 or more. Might be a bit specific. I'm happy to get information to this person after. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's probably best if you can shoot that through through Emily, and then we can have the appropriate teams investigate and provide a response back. Yeah.
Yeah. Just replying. Awesome. With my typos, apology to that person. All right. And there's some more here in relation to costs, but I might leave them until after Brian's spoken because I think he might answer some of those already. So let me get it together, everybody. Excuse me while I reshare my screen. Before we move on, Richard, did you want to answer these myths that the smart meters cause fires, that they can be hacked, and that the data will be publicly available?
Yes, no problem. I'm just going to clear my throat first, but sorry.
And I'll leave Richard on.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so the myth about smart meters causing fires. So ultimately, the smart meter has to be approved by all different levels of government. And ultimately, it's no difference to any other appliance you have in your house. It needs to get what's called an RCM, regulatory compliance mark. And that mark has to meet both the electricity safety rules and the Electrical Safety Equipment Act. And also it's got to pass the ACMA's radio and EMC requirements. So on top of that, there's rules around smart metering from AEMO that are actually patent approvals required for a smart meter to be registered to be used by an MP. And there's been studies done on smart meters, especially Victoria was rolled out smart meters much earlier than the rest of the country. And there's been studies done there, and it's been proven that smart meters have had no impact to increasing fires at a household. And the results showed that mostly it was due to, incorrectly wired switchboards or lightning or that sort of thing. There is some concern about the battery in a smart meter sometimes. It's a very small lithium battery, smaller than what you even use, smaller than a AA battery. And it's not actually charged. It's only kept in the smart meter so it can keep a time clock running in case there's a power outage. Mm-hmm. And that battery is very low power and very safely installed. So, and there's been no evidence of that battery causing any issues either from the point of view of causing fires. The meter itself is also designed that it's in a type of material where it's not flammable. In fact, if a fire happened around it, it won't catch on fire. Obviously, if the whole house burnt down, was a different thing. So I think I've answered that one.
Yep. Okay. Hacked. Can they be hacked?
Well, again, when I was showing earlier, the way that it's regulated is we're on a completely separate network, and even within the telecoms network, we're running more or less, one of a better word, a virtual private network. So the data is not publicly available. We don't even operate, the modem doesn't even have a phone number or even work on SMS. So there's no way in to call the modem or SMS to it. And then behind the scenes, everything's regulated by with an Energy Queensland side of things and our cybersecure rules and privacy rules. The data being available to retailers and networks is all administered by AER and AEMO rules over how that gets. It's all done via market systems called MSATs. So it's very well looked after. Once it obviously gets to the retailer, and there's apps that you need to be registered for, just make sure that you've got two-factor authentication and all that sort of stuff set up just to improve your privacy on that side of things. But yeah, that's the question answered, I hope, the myth answered.
Yeah, and then will the data that's collected be publicly available?
No, well, again, it's not publicly available. It will be available to the local network service provider. So in this case, it'd be Ergon or Energex network. It'll be available to the retailer that you're using for your energy bill.
Yep.
And it'll be available to AEMO, who is the Australian Energy Market Operator, who will use that data in aggregate form to better manage the entire market, energy market. Of course, from the point of view of publicly available, retailers do have apps and websites, but typically you've got to be registered to log into them, and there's I can't speak for all retailers, but there's different methods of being authenticated. So just make sure, again, that, just like with any type of app you're using, that you've got the best two-factor authentication turned on where possible.
Excellent. And we've just received another question that I think you might be able to answer too. It says, does a smart meter allow a regulator to turn off my air conditioner? And I believe this person is referring to the Peak Smart program.
Yeah, that's a good one. And maybe back to Luke, but from the point of view of a smart meter, currently in Queensland, we don't have any connections from the smart meter to home appliances. The smart meter itself can measure the hot water energy usage, but typically there's like a separate network device, like a relay put in place before the chat channel on the smart meter that will control the hot water, and that's done by the network, but with Energex or Ergon. Other states do have rules that allow the smart meter to turn on or off, say, a hot water system, but we're not currently at that stage in Queensland. Luke, did you want to add anything about this Peak Smart program, or maybe Brian?
Yeah, I probably would suggest Brian might be a bit more across that than myself.
Yeah, there's two ways that two voluntary ways that people can participate in programs. You can get a Peak Smart air conditioner, which typically just turns the aircon down a little bit during the hot days. In return for that, customers get that upfront cash back, or there's the ongoing incentive where they can put their air conditioner onto an economy tariff, which again gets a lower rate because that device is measured separately. So all the usage on the hot water system or the air conditioner gets a lower rate in return for the network on peak days, peak evenings, to be able to turn that air conditioner off. But they're both voluntary programs. Customers can opt in and opt out.
Excellent. So the smart meter, it's just having a smart meter cannot turn your air conditioner on or off. That's a whole separate program you have to opt in.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for that. Before we move on from Richard, if there's any more questions, I think we've answered a lot of them and thrown a lot more at you too. So thank you very much for that.
No problem. Thanks for the opportunity.
No worries. And then last but certainly not least is Brian.
Great. Hopefully I'll keep everyone awake. There's lots of good questions. So my name's Brian. Part of my role with Energex and Ergon is to help outwork the understanding with our customers, particularly our residential customers, of all the changes that are happening with metering and tariffs and what it actually means to you. To be honest, there has been a lot of changes happening recently, and they haven't always been explained as best they could have, and that has caused some confusion and angst with customers. So I'm going to put that on the table. That I think the electricity industry as a whole could have done better, and part of this session is to help educate you. And we've got some websites I'll refer to later. So all of us have an electricity account from a retailer. You don't get a bill from Energex or Ergon, but a big part of that bill you do get does carry forward some of the costs of running the Poles and Wires business. So that's why we're particularly keen to help people understand it. Ultimately, you get a tariff electricity bill from your retailer, so they're the ones you have the conversation with. But if we can arm you with information that you can have the right conversation with your current retailer or a different retailer, if your current retailer is not giving you what you need, that's the aim there. Look, so tariffs can be confusing and they can be even pretty boring. Just ask my wife. She gets to hear about it every night. But everything I talk about today, we've got web content that talks about in quite detail. We've also produced a few animations, so you can actually just watch the 2 or 3 minute animation to explain the tariffs. So hopefully that's something that can be of value for you. And the last thing before I jump into the preso is I appreciate we may have, that's okay. We will have people from regional Queensland and Southeast Queensland dialing in. And there are some subtle differences, real differences between the tariff arrangements in the southeast and regional Queensland. The big one, I guess, is that in southeast Queensland, you may have been moved on a different tariff, or the customer or your retail asked you to move to a different tariff, whereas in regional Queensland, the flat rate tariff, known as Tariff 11, is still the default tariff. So there's a little bit of difference there to call out before we jump in. As Luke and Richard talked about, smart meters increase the type of tariffs they have access to because they record electricity information in regular intervals, not just your total consumption every 90 days. But they don't necessarily increase your bill. They could, depending on how you use electricity. It's a bit like owning a car. Like if you've got a fast car, you see if someone drive a Lamborghini down the highway, they're often sitting at 95. They don't drive their car fast. But if you drive that Lamborghini at 150 k's an hour and the speed limit's 100, you will get a speeding ticket. So it just depends how you use electricity in your home and how far and what the tariff arrangements are, whether you're going to be better off and worse off. So there's two things to bear in mind there: how you use electricity and what plan you're on. But in South Queensland, as I said, from 2020, there were changes to tariffs, and some people did get a bigger bill because those new tariffs were sort of lumped on them, and they weren't explained very well necessarily by their retailer. But there has been some changes recently. The government's responded and made some rules about what tariff changes retailers can bring in, and having to get consent from customers before they move them. Like I said, like anything you buy, you go to Coles, Woolly, Aldi, you buy a plane ticket, anything you do, if you just understand what you're buying and how you want to use that product, and that can help you get a better result from your electricity bill. Next one, Kathleen.
Next one. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So Luke covered this bit, but it's important to know that your electricity bill, there's lots of different components to come into it. It's super complicated, but by the time you get your bill, there's all these sort of costs that go into it. So your retail tariff does cover all of those costs that go into running your bill, and they reflect the way the market's changing. And from a network business, what we need to do is encourage people to use less energy in the evening and more in the daytime. I'm looking outside now in Brisbane. It's a very sunny day. The load on the electricity network would be quite low because it's not that hot. People aren't using air cons much, but there's so much solar from rooftops being pumped into the grid. So we want people to use more energy if they can now. But on hot summer days in February, when we've had a heat wave for 4 days in a row, if we can reduce the amount of energy that people need to use in that peak times, that will help us keep costs down on the network. And that's what the changing tariffs basically want to do. They want to send a price signal. If you can, move that energy usage from the peak time to the off-peak. Next one. So I'm just going to rip through tariffs 101. There's three main types of what we call the primary tariff. That's the main tariff. Everyone has a primary tariff, their house. And then there's a couple of optional economy tariffs as well. So the flat rate tariff is what we've all had on 52. When I was born, that's what the flat rate tariffs were for many years. People were used to that. It's the same price all day, every day. You get a daily charge, fixed dollar daily charge, $1 a day, $1.20, $1.30, whatever, that sort of figure, plus a cents per kilowatt hour, same rate every day. And as I said, those tariffs are being wound up because it doesn't encourage people to use less electricity in the peak times and the off-peak. So those ones are typically being wound up, but some retailers are still offering them. Actually, they still have to offer them, but they may increase their prices on those flat tariffs to cover their costs. Now, the second one that people have heard about, and it's been talked about a lot in the media, is demand tariffs. And demand is a type of energy use, and I'll talk about demand versus consumption in a bit. But a demand tariff has a daily charge, and it also charges you based on how much demand you put on the network, which is about the rate at which you lose electricity, not the total amount. Now, that demand is typically that they'll look at between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. and they'll look for the single highest half hour during 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. of how much demand you put on the network. So it's a bit like getting a speeding ticket once a month for how fast you drive your car between 4 and 9 p.m. It's looking for the single highest half hour. Now, some retailers, when you look at your bill, they'll convert that to dollars per kilowatt per day, but all they're really doing is divided the charge that we put them by 31. They don't charge you per day. So they don't charge you on, today's Thursday. They don't charge you for your demand on Thursday, for your demand on Friday. They will still look at the single highest half hour of demand in the peak window of 4 to 9. It can be a little bit confusing because they convert it to dollars per kilowatt per day, but you're not getting charged for the 31 days of demand on the network. It's just that single highest half hour that the meters, when they look at the meter data, they work out that single highest half hour. Now, under those tariffs, you still get charged for kilowatt hours. So that's just your total consumption during that period. Now, that can be the same rate for kilowatt hours, or it can be also peak and off-peak period. So you just need to check with your retailer how they do that. Some of them will do flat rate. Some of them will still encourage you with that charging element to do peak and off-peak type rates. So that's demand. Next one is what we call time of use energy. So that's really just having a flat rate, dollars per day, and we're not charged for demand. You just charge for the amount of kilowatt hours you consume in those windows. Now, our windows that we tell retailers are peak is 4 to 9. Then from 9 p.m. at night to 11 o'clock the next morning is shoulder, and off peak, which will be the really cheapest one, almost zero. Retailers their cost, of course, is between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. But check with your retailer when those charges are, and you can write it on your fridge. So these are the times, and if you can move stuff outside that peak period, that's when you can make some good savings.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the three primary tariffs. There's the optional secondary tariff we talked about, and they're come with lots of different names: Tariff 33, Controlled Load 1, Economy, Super Economy. They're where you have a separately metered appliance, like an air conditioner, pool pump, hot water system, those things like that. That in return for a lower rate, it's connected to a circuit where the network, when on peak days, we can send a ripple signal down the power lines and just temporarily interrupt supply. So you don't put something on there that you desperately need. It's a hot water system. If that goes off for a few hours, it doesn't matter. You'll still have hot water, those types of things. Your pool pump goes off, that doesn't matter. You wouldn't put sensitive equipment on there that you'd need 24-hour supply to. Next one. So a bit deeper. So demand and consumption. Demand is a term that a lot of people get confused about, but I again use the car analogy. Think of demand like the maximum speed you travel in your car. Say you drive from Brisbane to the Gold Coast, the maximum speed you travel would be your demand. The total distance you travel would be your consumption. So that's the two things. It's the rate at which you use it, the maximum rate, versus the total distance. That's the difference. Now, demand is measured over 30 minutes. It's not your single highest half hour. So if I go into my kettle and my toaster on, that'll use 4 kilowatts, about 2 kilowatts each, but they're only on for a minute and a half. You don't get charged for that single highest. It's the average. So it's not totally trying to penalize you for just turning a few things on just for a minute or two. It looks at the total over half an hour. So if you're on demand tariff, it's the 4 to 9 period. You don't get charged for demand outside the 4 to 9, but you will get charged for key consumption. So just remember that. It's just, again, comes back to understanding your tariff. It's like having to drive a car. You need to know how to drive the car, and then you get the best experience of that. Next one.
Lost my mouse. There we go.
Yeah. So all it comes down to, you don't have to be a wizard on tariffs. There's some steps you can go through. Put it back to your retailer. Ask them to do a tariff analysis if they can. If their systems, and if you have a smart meter, they'll be able to compare more tariffs. Get them to do the work for you. Find the best deal for them. Ask them if you're better off on a different tariff. If they can't help you, there are comparison sites. Obviously, your retailer will only look at their own tariffs. They won't. If you're at Origin, they won't compare AGL's tariffs or whatever. You can use comparison site. Look, I've had experience with some of those comparison sites. Some are better than others. The Energy MAD is a government site. It's not perfect. It does have a few flaws. And I would just, from my own experience, I've used some of these comparison sites, and I can not lying when I say I've probably had 150 phone calls from overseas call centers trying to change my electricity bill, because I think at some point I went onto one of these comparison sites. And so there are ones that will publicise they have a no-call policy, and if you want to avoid that chance of getting pestered by an overseas call centre, you may want to look at a no-call policy. Someone, like I said, you'll avoid those sales calls. So if you're looking at comparison site, if you think a time of use tariff, you think, well, if the time of use tariff rewards me for moving my energy usage, just remember, if you're not currently on a time of use tariff, you're probably not used to using energy outside of the peak period. So just think, well, my historical data doesn't really show me what I would do in the future if I was on this time of use tariff. So just bear that in mind, that the previous comparison will just look at what you've done before. It won't think of, oh, actually, no, I don't need to use a dishwasher. I don't need to run the pool pump between 4 and 9. If that was on a different period, my bill impact would be a lot different. Most retailers have an app, free service online or through an app. They can actually show you electricity usage. So, take advantage of all the things they offer. Knowledge is power. If you can't do it yourself, there's lots of people through Coda and others can help you manage your bill. It's just good to probably check it at least once a year, because rates, particularly in Southeast Queensland, rates change, offers change. Just once a year, put in your calendar, review your electricity bill. Next one. So variable rate tariffs, they do send a price signal. If you're on a demand charge, we've got some examples in that image below that, on the left, using all that energy between 4 and 9, it's just about spreading that load to the off-peak times, because you don't get charged for the demand in the off-peak time. So where you can, move that load outside. But if you have to run, like in our house, we have an air fryer. The kids love an air fryer delights in the evening. We're doing our cooking in the evening. What you can do is just stagger it between the 4 and 9 period if you can. So if you need to run the dishwasher, maybe try to do that after you've done all the cooking and things like that. So if you need to run it during the peak period, try to stagger it for your demand charge. Even better, just try and move it outside the 4 to 9. But you have to do what makes sense for your household. We're not expecting people to fully change their lives. Just do what makes sense for you. Couple of quick facts. We get a lot of people telling us the retailer won't give me a flat rate tariff, or Energex is telling me what tariff I need to be on. Completely and utterly false. We do not tell retailers how to charge electricity. We have no say in it. We have no control on it. They will charge what they want to charge. Yes, we are billing them in a certain way, but they do not have to pass through that bill. In fact, new laws came in at the end of last year. Retailers have to offer a flat rate tariff, regardless of the type of meter. Now the flat rate tariffs can actually be more expensive than the variable demand and time use tariff. So just be aware, flat rate's simple, but doesn't mean it's cheaper.
Excellent.
Yeah, like I said, flat rates are simple, but they're not always better. If I got solar, yes, solar can help. Just remember, solar systems work by offsetting what you buy from the grid whilst the solar's operating. So you want to put as much energy usage if you've got solar during when your solar's operating. You do get paid a feed-in tariff. If you're lucky, you're on the 44 cent. If you're not, you're being paid very little for your solar. So try to move your energy when your solar's generating. I think one more slide. So if you're really keen, yes, smart meters will give you information. They get, as Luke mentioned, they get read every evening, and you can see the information the day before. It's a bit like getting a speeding ticket, but they don't tell you when you're speeding. It's the day after. You can't see the thing. So there are apps that you can put in. They'll give you real-time information in your home. Some of these you can self-install. They're a few $100s each. So there's different ways. If you're really keen to monitor energy usage, these things will give you real-time information. You can turn things on and think, oh, what's happened there? I'm using a lot more than I thought. So yeah, tariffs can be confusing. Everything I've talked about, you can find on those websites. We've got some 2 animations there, and if you get really stuck, there's an email address there. We can help you out. We can't talk to you. We can't tell you exactly which retail tariff to get on, but we can give you advice if a retailer is telling you something you don't quite follow, understand. We've got that email address that we want to help clarify anything for customers.
Excellent. And I'll make sure to send this stuff out with the recording to everyone as well, so people have all of these links that you're referring to and that email as well.
And we're keen to hear from people, because we don't, if we keep having a bad experience with their retailer, we've actually built a lot of our web content based on what people have told us their problems are. So read that web content. If you've got troubles, I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Just in the essence of time, we're bang on 11, but I do have a couple more questions if I could keep you all for a couple more minutes. Happy to send some information through to these people separately. But one question I got is, if a smart meter stops working, such as from a lightning strike, how would we know? The context of that is that question came through, Brian, right at the beginning when you were speaking about the different tariffs. So
it's probably one for Richard.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So ultimately, part of the great thing of having comms to the meter is we get to check the assets operation every night. So if we can't get the data from the meter, what will happen is we'll send a substituted reading. That will happen for a number of days. Once that's sorted, sorry about the noise back here. Once that's sorted, we will then send a tech out to site and to investigate what's wrong, because we can't get the data. And if it's then known that the meter's completely faulty, they'll replace the meter with a new one. And then there'll be some rules applied to either get the data out of the meter if it's available manually, or substitute the data based on previous days' profile.
Awesome. The next two are very similar. One just says, will costs increase? But then the next question is of that same vein. When smart meters were first rolled out, a lot of people found electricity charges increased. There was outcry, which was reported onto media. Has that problem that they encountered, that they were being charged for electricity they had not used because the charges had been averaged, has all of that been corrected? It's quite a lengthy question. Sorry about that.
There's a bit I can talk about. So yeah, there was an outcry, lots of ABC stories, and people were quite rightly raising concerns that, what's this new tariff? I don't know how it means. I don't know what demand means. So there's some rules that came in that, particularly in Queensland, retailers must have a flat rate tariff option, even if it's more expensive. People like it flat rate. That's great. It's a flat rate option. Retailers have to offer. And there's a new rule that says, and one of the triggers for changing tariffs was a smart meter installed. For the first 2 years after a smart meter is installed, the retailers have to have explicit informed consent to change your tariff. And even after that 2-year period, or they have to explain the new tariff properly and compare your current tariff to the new tariff if they're going to move you. And then if you don't want to move, you just go to a different retailer. So there has been some changes to put some protections in for customers.
Awesome. And then in the discussion about remote access, sorry, my eyes are terrible, about remote access to turning off the power, I was interested in the ability to turn off hot water. Whilst it won't be done without consent, can people request a remote turn off of hot water versus needing to install a separate meter or a controlled load? As a smart meter often remove established controlled loads, don't they?
You want to take that one, Brian or Luke?
Yeah,
if you like, I can sort of talk to the start of that. So from a network perspective, Networks is still interested in having our controlled load so that we can then manage the hot water system. So at this point, we're still working with our current system, which you'll have that that receiver that will then toggle your hot water on and off from a network perspective. However, other states have moved through to that being controlled by the meter and the retailer. And I'll hand over to Brian now, because there is a little bit happening in that space in Queensland as well.
Yeah, we're looking at a trial with that. But one of the question relates to people often, when they install solar, that's a trigger for their meter to change. And if they've had their electricity hot water system on a separate tariff, when they have solar, they often want to move all of their electricity or their equipment back to their main tariff, because that's the best way they can actually use their solar to offset electricity usage from those appliances. So I'm not sure that may be related to that. Certainly economy tariffs are probably, if you've got a big solar system, it would make sense to move everything onto your main tariff in most cases. So that may be related to that.
Lovely. That's all the questions that I received while you were all presenting. Thank you so much. I'm just going to pop the poll up now while I say thank you so much. We have answered all, as I said, the questions that have come through, and there's a few there that we will take offline and send through to everybody. At the end of this, I will send out my email address to everybody directly who has attended. So if you have any follow-up questions, or you feel like you needed more information, or perhaps you didn't get a chance to ask a question today of any of our presenters, please send those questions through, and I'll make sure that I get them back to you. We'll collate everything and send it all out in the next perhaps week when we collate all the information and get this recording up online. I would love to thank everybody for attending, everybody for registering. Thank you so much, Richard, Luke, and Brian for facilitating, and lovely Emily, who has been there and helped organise this whole thing as well. So I appreciate you all very much. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate the time.
No worries. Bye.